We are on air.
Hey, everybody. Glad you could join us. If you're watching this video, Mohan and I are here to talk to you a little bit about DSFA. So what does DSFA stand for? We don't have enough acronyms, right? It stands for Database Services Flexible Architecture. But what does it really mean? Before we get deep into it, I just want to make a plug for, I guess it's a shameless plug for Mohan and I's book. We wrote this book. I'm showing you the actual Amazon link to it right now. 10.1, 10.5 Linux, Unix, Windows Database Administration Certification Guide. In Appendix A of this book, you can see what we're going to be discussing today, which is DSFA. It's pretty much detailed out in Appendix A, and we're going to start talking about each of those and provide a little bit more detail and a little bit more reasons for why they're done the way they're done, and an introduction, which really isn't in Appendix A. So anyway, there's a place for you to go to get the book, and we hope that you do. And then, like I said, in Appendix A, you can get the information that we're actually presenting here today in this YouTube video that we're working on right now. So what is DSFA? DSFA is a collection of guidelines and rules that provides flexibility, availability, scalability, and performance. Sometimes the acronym RASP is used for building an enterprise level architecture. Now, again, if you're building databases and or servers and instances that are going to service 10 users in a dentist office or in some form of a small shop, back office shop, then you don't need to build enterprise quality, right? We're talking about those companies and systems that need enterprise level capabilities. And what do we mean by enterprise level? Enterprise level are systems or environments that are built that run for years and years and years. They handle tens, if not hundreds of thousands of users and transactions per day, maybe even millions or maybe even billions of transactions per day. And they need to be built in a way that hardens them in the environment and basically allows them to operate and process when abnormal situations occur, right? So when you have transactions that are not properly tested and they abort and abandon and die, you don't want them to affect the enterprise. When you have new systems introduced, new applications that are introduced into the enterprise, new services, new application products that are introduced into the enterprise, you don't want them to affect other workloads that are running in that enterprise. So basically it allows for large numbers of products, applications, workloads, varying different types of workloads, say in an HTAP type of architecture, allows them to run without affecting or harming each other, and really provides a level of availability and performance that your enterprise demands. We're going to go over DSFA in the order in which we actually presented in the book. So we're going to start with the outer shell, which is the server, and then we're going to work our way into the instance, and then we'll work our way into the database, and we'll talk about the policies and guidelines that make up a very flexible architecture. I think we're going to do this in several different sessions. So we'll have a session today, then we'll have a session tomorrow, and we'll just keep working our way down through presenting all of DSFA in its complete, the way it's completely defined. So server management, database servers, a lot of times people will deploy servers and they'll run varying different workloads in that server. In an enterprise architecture, you want database servers to run databases only. There's even some circles where open source code and open source products are not allowed to be deployed on those servers. You basically want to be sure that that code is validated through some form of scanner to make sure it doesn't have any viruses or any issues in it. And so what most of the people do, instead of running through those scanners for open source and things like that, they just don't allow any open source products to be deployed on the servers. But you want to restrict logins on those servers. so that only the DBA support or the folks supporting that database are actually able to log onto that server. You do not want anyone except those that are absolutely required to have root level access. So you want to restrict root level access to those boxes. Same thing would be true for Windows servers. If you're running on a Windows machine, you would want to limit the administrator rights on those servers. You want to be sure that the DB2 instance owner is restricted, and you want to require that, that all the database support users sudo to that account instead of being able to just simply log into that account directly. So basically set up a group for your DBAs, allow your DBAs to get on the box and then sudo to the instance owner account. Manage all of your database software using root, and place the software into Unix in the opt/opt file system on a Windows drive letter set up specifically for the software. Keep that drive letter to C. Usually on Windows, what we like to do, and what I think is a really good idea, is to keep all of your software components on the C drive, and then anything that's not OS level software, put it on a different drive. Create the DB2 instance outside of the DB2 setup command. Most of the time, the best way to create an instance is to do it with DB2 ICRT. Don't create the instance as part of the setup. Just deploy the software and do the setup using just the straight command. It allows you to think about the instance before you create it. Be sure that everything that you need is there. The proper accounts are defined on the box and other things. You want to be able to be sure to set your UMask setting. A lot of people may not know what UMask is, but basically it sets the file system default for when you're creating files. Obviously, you want those files to not be read by anyone, but only available to the instance owner and to the least the access rights to be the most restricted that you can provide, and still run the instance and execute everything. Right? You don't want to set them to 777 or anything like that. The U limits for all DB2 instance owners should be set to unlimited. Now, in more recent releases of DB2, that's been a little bit less required, because IBM has made it to where that gets done automatically on a lot of the Unix platforms. I think all of them actually. When you do the install and set up the instance, it will automatically set the U limits for that instance owner account. But not a bad idea to just understand that, regardless of whether it's automatically being done for you. It's just good to know that that should be done, and you should set the U limits to unlimited. A lot of security groups don't want everything set to unlimited, but things like memory and CPU, file system size, those things need to be unlimited. You want to be sure that the password for your DB2 instance account doesn't expire. It would be pretty bad for it just to expire. So you want to be able to, you want to set it to never expire, the password for that account. For AIX systems, again, the newer ones, I think automatically do this, but in some of the older systems, you had to explicitly state that you wanted asynchronous IO to be enabled. So be sure you do that. You want to turn off SE Linux. Again, in the newer systems, SE Linux can be in monitor mode, or not in force, but in, I forget what the setting actually is, but it's running in monitor mode so that it logs activity. But I think you can now run SE Linux in some of the newer systems. You can run it enabled, enforced. It was set to enforced. But most of the older systems, it's recommended to run SE Linux disabled. You want to be sure that you set up your Ethernet adapters to be bonded, so that they're close the ports that you don't need, enable the ports that you do, and be sure that those ports are set up to execute inbound traffic or outbound traffic or backups, basically bond them to the workload that you want to execute against them. And if you're doing SSO and Active Directory, then, with some type of central authentication repository, you want to be sure you set your authentication to be local first and then remote second. That way, if you can't get on because of the local password or local account, then you can get on using AD or a central repository. But I like to do that because in some cases, if AD is down or whatever you're using for your central repository is down, then you won't be able to get on a box at all. So if you do it local first, then the accounts will authenticate locally first. So that's pretty much what we have for the server level management with DSFA standards and guidelines. And now we can move to file system management. Mohan, you still with me?
Yes, Kent, it's great. It's coming really good. Awesome. One question I have about the SE Linux, that is the permissive, right?
Yep.
Is it possible for us to build kind of a SE Linux configuration for workload specific? For example, a workload is running with the OLTP or OLAP. Is it possible to build a SE Linux configuration based on the workload?
It is. You can actually run it in log mode, where it actually logs the different methods and modules that are being executed by that workload. And then you can go and define the rules for those specific ones if the vendor doesn't provide it automatically. What would be best would be, let's say you're buying a product, just for the sake of argument here. You bought a product that's going to run on Linux, and you want to run it with SE Linux enabled. The vendor should be able to tell you, which ones need to be allowed, which ones need to be set up in the rules to allow them to be executed and processed. They should be able to give you that file. Okay. And then you can simply deploy that file on the server when you get ready to enable SE Linux.
Okay. Cool.
A lot of security groups, especially in major companies like ours, like the one me and you work at, actually, they don't like to be responsible for having to go and build that, because they don't know all the different methods that are going to be executed and what command structure is going to be executed in the Linux environment. So they don't know how to set that file up, and they don't want to mask everything, because then if you use wildcards and you mask it, then their argument is that someone might be able to misuse it for that purpose. Right. And if you're just going to basically put stars, I don't know, for every command, just do a DB2 star or whatever for every command, and every method it's going to get executed, then what's the point of having the file in the first place, right? Yeah. So they want it to be as restrictive as possible. So they really like the vendor to provide it. And like in the Oracle world, they provide it. In the DB2 world, I don't know if they actually provide the SE Linux file today in the later versions or not. Now I know in the early versions, the 10.1, 10.5s that you and I wrote the book about, they didn't provide one back in those days. But I don't know if now in 11.5 they're actually providing an SE Linux file. They might be. I don't know.
Okay.
Any other one? Any other good question? That was a good question.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, session is great, and I think we'll continue to do so. But second session would be on a file system management, and we'll continue to complete all the sessions for DSFA guidelines, and then we will talk more about PureScale and workload management in real time and multiple other DB2 sessions, right?
Yep. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to us. They can go to our website or try to follow us on the web. We've got some blogs out there. The DB Enterprise, right? DBenterprise.com, right?
EnterpriseDB.com. Yeah.
EnterpriseDB2.com. They could go there, read our blogs there, and obviously a lot of people have our contact information, email wise and whatnot. Just reach out to us. But also they could just grab again, another shameless plug for the book. they could grab the book, and I'm sure there are a lot more details about setting up instances and setting up servers in other chapters in the book. This is just a real, appendix type presentation on DSFA, and really just bullet type items basically. But again, Mohan, I'd say if you don't get the server right, then you're going to have a lot of problems if you're trying to build an enterprise environment, right? I mean, the server is pretty much, you need to get it set up correctly. You need to get it running correctly. You need to get the adapters set up in a fault tolerant manner, right? So that if you lose one adapter, it fails over to another adapter. Like these Ethernet adapters, they can be set up so that you have a primary adapter, and then you can fail over to a standby adapter if the first adapter fails. You could also load balance the adapters, set them up in a load balance configuration where you are able to distribute workload across the different adapters. So there's a lot of stuff in setting up a server correctly. So,
absolutely right. That's like a foundation.
Yep. Well, glad y'all could join us today. Hopefully, we'll get better at this, Mohan and I. I mean, this is the first time I've actually done a video like this, and so I'll get better at it and be able to present the material even better, I hope. And I hope you got some information out of it today if you've been listening. Some information that could be helpful for you to build servers in the future.
Thanks, Ken, for your time, and we'll come back again.
Thanks, Mohan.
Thank you. Bye-bye.